Hello and welcome. I'm Mary Lee LaBay, founder of Integrative Healing Arts Academy. In this video, I'm joined by one of my graduates of the Integrative Hypnotherapy and Past Life Regression professional training course, Graham Robinson. We plan to discuss some finer points on launching and expanding your private practice. If you are newly certified or need guidance on building your hypnotherapy practice, you'll no doubt find today's discussion helpful. Graham, I would like you to introduce yourself, please, and then we'll dive in and begin the conversation.
Hi, Mary Lee. Yes, as you said, I'm one of your graduates, and I would think this is the hardest subject of all. I mean, everything else you look to learn and you practice, but you can't practice marketing. Well, you can, but don't want to cost you a fortune. So this conversation, I think, is probably the most difficult because most people may be drawn to therapies are not marketers as such. They're not those people who look at that. The world, I know there are plenty of marketers out there, but of course, if people want to set it up themselves, yeah, it still is something that I struggle with. So this is going to help me as well.
I
Uh,
struggle with it too.
so
Not my
for
favorite thing.
for a newly qualified hypnotherapist, like myself or like the thousands of others who may be qualifying, what is the most crucial thing that you think is to be done to establish their business? What must they do first up, and how must they think about it?
Yeah. Well, before enrolling in a course, I highly recommend students check out the regulations in their area because it varies from country to country. In the United States, it varies from state to state, whether you can practice or what you need to do in order to practice. We have states here where there's no regulation at all. You just hang your shingle and you go for it. Um, Here in Washington, we have to be registered, which is really a process of doing a background check, right? They don't really, um, check out how many hours you've studied or how good you are. They just want to know that you're not a criminal, I guess, or have deviant behaviors. So here that's called a registration. So one of the things that I think new students get confused about and need to sort out in their heads is that there's licensing and hypnotherapists are not licensed. Uh,
Mm,
Licensing is when you take a bar exam or a board exam, like for a psychologist. And so we are not licensed. Even, I see hypnotherapists out there talking about their license, and it's like, well, I don't think so unless you're a psychologist or something like that. There's registration, which I mentioned is registering with the Department of Health in your state or country. Then there's certification, which is what I give people, and other schools will educate you and give you a certification for a certain number of hours, and certain topics that they teach you. And then there's association membership. So um, like to join, the biggest one here now is National Guild of Hypnotists, and they are mostly national in the United States, but they are international. They draw in people from all over the world. And that membership, you could have a regular membership for a lay person, but once you get certified, you can have a professional level membership, and then they would require that you have 100 hours of training. And then there's other associations that require 200 or 300 hours of training, just depending, like the medical level of hypnotherapy. If you join their organization, they're going to require 300 hours of certification, of education. So, just understanding that and, kind of navigating that for where you live. And for people local here, or if you're in, an area where you do have to register, I encourage my students to begin that process even as they're studying. I know in Washington, they're not going to ask you if you're actually certified. They just want to know that you're practicing hypnotherapy. So you could get that going. So because it often takes 5 or 6 weeks to get that certification approved or that registration. I'm
Mm.
making the mistake already. To get the registration approved. And so that way, by the time they come through the course, then they already have their registration. So another thing that I encourage people to do as they're taking the course is go and get your business license. Because in order to hang a shingle and actually take money, you need to have a business license. So most of the, I think probably everywhere now, you can just register for that online. So you can take care of those things. And then by the time you graduate and get your certification, then you're off and running. The other thing to, seriously consider is liability insurance. I'll admit I didn't have liability insurance for the first several years that I was working, and then I got it, and I'm glad I have it. If a person makes a complaint and they can make up stuff, they can just, be angry about something and then make a complaint to the Department of Health, that liability insurance will kick in legal fees and things for you to defend yourself. So, it's not mandatory. However, with the liability insurance, some of the um, okay, yeah, I was getting it backwards. So the liability insurance may require that you're a member of one of the professional organizations, because they want to make sure that you at least are promising to follow the ethical guidelines of that association. And again, they don't have any way of testing how good you are at what you do, but they want to be sure that you've already promised, okay, I'm going to uh, live by these guidelines.
Mm.
And also the guidelines, like here in Washington, we have to adhere to the same ethical standards as a psychologist, a dentist, a doctor, any kind of health professional. If if we break any of the rules that are in place for them, we are also in danger of losing our ability to work.
It is interesting. You mentioned regulation. Of course, I'm based in Australia where it's self-regulation. I imagine the UK or Canada or somewhere else around the world, somewhere in, say, Africa and you have international students, is always going to be different. So it is important to check out. The market for online therapy and including hypnotherapists these days is very crowded now. If you Google through, you see just how many are around. So for a newcomer, how do you cut through that? How can you take an approach to stand apart?
Yeah. There's quite a few things that I think you need to do in order to stand apart. And I agree. The market is flooded, and I feel a little guilty about that because I've trained almost 1,000 students. And it's like, now, was that a good idea? Um, but it has changed. And so, I opened my practice in officially in 1997, and things were a lot different. We didn't have laptops and social media and all of that. And so it was a very different audience that we were marketing to. So these days, um, you have to pay attention to the trends, the algorithms, and if you're not familiar with them, like I'm not, that's not wheelhouse. That's not where I want to put my time. So I hire a virtual assistant. And you can get virtual assistants for a very reasonable cost. And that's all they do. You know, they are watching the algorithms, they're figuring out, because it keeps changing. Like
Mm,
what did even to rank on Google, you know, a year or two ago has changed. In 5 years, if you're still doing what you did 5 years ago, you'll be lost in the fray. So I have had virtual assistants for probably 15, 20 years because I just don't want to take care of it. So I say, get a virtual assistant. Um, and then personal referrals is really going to be the magic in your business. And so one of the benefits that I think comes out of having the training is that you are required to practice on other people, right? So you can practice on friends and colleagues and family. And hopefully, you know, right away, you're going to be, even though you're practicing, you're going to be giving them really good results. And then, you know, they're living their lives and somebody wants to quit smoking or lose weight or has a bad habit or, you know, something stress, you know, some stress in their life. And then that person that you worked on is going to say, hey, you know what? I had this amazing experience with hypnotherapy with Graham. Why don't you call him? Maybe he can help you too. So that personal referral, everybody I talk to, well, most of the people I talk to, you know, after a while, they're telling me personal referrals is really the bulk of what they're doing, or the people that are coming to them. It is for me as well. Um, and certainly getting out and networking, going to um, meetings, going, you know, presenting in front of a ladies group or a civic organization. I used to do all these things long ago. I don't do as much now, but just getting in front of people or attending. You know, I attended a lot of networking, you know, like ladies' luncheons or something, and you're passing out your business card, you're letting people know what you do. One of the things that I've come to realize, and I had a conversation like this with a colleague recently, in that, you know, it's really easy to start networking, but in your own pond, right? So I used to do a lot of presentations for hypnotherapy groups, but everybody there is already certified, right? And so I put all this effort and I did all these presentations all over the world, even India, the Netherlands, in different states in the United States. And, you know, all of a sudden it dawned on me, I'm not getting students from this because they're already trained. And I'm not getting clients particularly because they already have their circle of friends, you know, that they went to school with or whatever. So that's not going to be the big wave of clients for you. So get out and talk to coaches or art therapists or massage therapists, you know, people who are doing something a little different, holistic healers, naturopaths. Talk to those groups because they could be a really good source of referral for you, right? You know, maybe a naturopath or what do you call it? A diet coach, nutrition coach. I'm sorry. Maybe they're looking for somebody that can help their clients get over, you know, that last block. Um, we talked about ads. I get very careful. I spent money on ads long ago. I didn't know what I was doing. Um, I would venture into that very cautiously. So not to discourage you, but if I did it, I would definitely hire someone who specializes in Facebook ads or Instagram ads or whatever you're doing. you know, get somebody who knows what they're doing before you dump a bunch of money. And the coaches I've talked to that, I was actively looking for somebody who could help me with ads, and they're telling me, well, we'll start out with $1,500 a month in ad spend. And it's like, oh my gosh, that starts adding up really
Mm,
quickly. And if you're not getting several clients out of that, you're just throwing it away.
mm.
So again, get somebody to help you.
It
The
does need a lot of clients, doesn't it, to repay the amount of the investment otherwise. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So the other thing is to build your credentials. When I first landed here and I opened my business, I got involved with the local chapter of the NGH. I actually, within the first year, I created my own chapter. They had a chapter in Seattle and they had one in the South Puget Sound, but I opened one in Bellevue. So, kind of triangulating that. I actually opened a chapter. So I was the president. And then later, that chapter did fold into the other Seattle chapter. And then I would sat on the board for them. I was on the board for another organization here called the National Hypnosis Association. It had been around for decades, but then it fell into disuse. We revived it, but then it faded again. Um, but get involved, so people know you.
Mm.
First of all, everybody, you just get a name, you get a reputation out there. But it also looks good on your credentials. So when you're writing your bio on your website, you can say, and I'm the vice president of the local chapter of the NGH or something like that. So it's just building credentials, right? Um,
What do you think about offering free workshops and maybe free understandings as a group? Is that worthwhile? Again, you have to attract some people to it, but do you think that's worthwhile doing?
Yeah, so I used to have a meetup group back when it was affordable to rent space for for a space, right? Now it's like, you're gonna spend $1,000 for an evening, so I'm not doing that. Maybe not that bad, but um you could do meetup groups. There's a very large meetup group in Seattle. They had hundreds of people and they used to meet in a library. So here's the thing, if you're going to do it for free, at least in the United States, you can get a space at the library. And the last time I did that, which now it has been years, but they said there's no charge for it as long as you allow anybody to walk in. In other words, if somebody's coming in to get a book and they go, oh, what's going on here? They can walk in and you can't say no,
Mm.
and you can't charge money for anybody. So if you're going to do it for free, then you'd have a free space as well. Um, but yes, workshops are amazing. For years, I gave workshops, like evening workshops in the continuing education department of a community college, right? So I was in their catalog. I was online listed under classes, and people would come. I'd have a room of 25 to 40 people in a 2-hour workshop, and I would get paid. I'd split it with the school, but I would get a little bit of money, a few $100s for my evening, which was fine. I didn't have anything else to do in the evening. I might as well make a few $100s. But even years later, I mean, right away I would get clients, but even years later, people would say, I saw you several years ago in that workshop, and I'm ready to do some work on myself. And so that pays off. Um, yes,
That,
definitely do the workshops.
that's an interesting point, isn't it? That somebody may see your poster, may see your name somewhere, but they're not quite ready to make the leap. So, it can take them months or years. So constantly having your name out by joining these groups and doing that keeps that in profile. You talked there about networking. Do you think it's important for a new hypnotherapist to really focus on the local I mean, today we've got obviously access to the internet and we can go worldwide immediately. But do you think it's important to really build that presence locally before you start reaching out internationally, or can you do both simultaneously?
I think it would depend on your own business plan. I think expanding locally first is a really great idea, right? Um, because people know you, you know, you can show up to places really easily, do the workshops and all of that. However, if you're in a really small town or maybe a town where people think hypnotherapy is weird or something, you know, you probably would naturally have to branch out a little more. So with the internet, I do all of my sessions over Zoom now since COVID, and they're very successful that way. And so I have a, you know, a reach all the way around the world. I have, you know, students and clients anywhere. Um, but it is harder, like if for the Google search, they want they want to make you have a circle on a map, right? And so I'm working with my VA right now to kind of readjust from, you know, I'm everywhere to I'm here within 30 miles of Seattle, and then start building it out again. So we're kind of collapsing it and then we'll build it out again
Mhm.
so that I can, so that it's really stronger locally. Um,
Yeah, I guess the larger it is, the weaker sometimes
it's
the
harder
premise is. Yeah, yeah, it is
to,
difficult. Um,
yeah.
you've mentioned a lot of areas that are sort of marketing and so forth, but of course, therapists, as we said at the beginning, and I include myself in this, are not great marketers. We simply are. We just want to do the therapy work and have clients turn up, but it doesn't work that way, as we know. So, what are some final tips about marketing and how to go about it that you think you would provide to a newly certified hypnotherapist or any therapist, really?
Well, if you're going to do social media, well, first of all, I have paid a virtual assistant to do nothing but social media for, I think, over 7 years. And I would say I got one client from it, doing reels and, you know, posts and all of that. That has, for me, it hasn't really worked. Now the younger generation knows how to use that a lot better. For me, it's just, you know, it's over my head. But what I've learned, because I do have a marketing coach that I work with, what I've learned is that messaging is everything. You have to, you know, the way that you say it. So at this point, unless you have a coach that's helping you, I would say go to AI and ask it how to create the best messaging, and you'll feed it what you want to say. You
Mm,
know, I want to talk about, you know, hypnotherapy for stress. What can I do that gets a catchy phrase that's going to hook a person in? And AI will coach you through it and help you to do that. Um, you could also take a quick little course. You know, there's a lot of coaches that will offer you a less expensive group coaching or maybe an online course that would help groom you to do a better job of marketing. Make sure that you have a website, absolutely, and I think we're going to talk about that, but have a um, well, what I was going to say is listen to what people are complaining about, right? So you have to listen to your audience. And if you're in a social situation and everybody is lamenting about gaining too much weight, or they're talking about they can't sleep at night, or they're addicted to their phones, you know, any of these things that they're talking about, keep, you know, take a notebook and make a list of all the things people are complaining about, and then do your videos and your posts and your workshops directly at what they're complaining about. Because, you know, or maybe you're seeing it on the news or you're seeing it in advertising, watch what the big advertisers are going for, right? And then address the same issues, but instead of pharmaceuticals, you can address it with hypnotherapy techniques.
You mentioned website there, and earlier you've mentioned, of course, you need a business name, and that's essential, which again sometimes could be hard to come up with considering all the other business names are out there. But um, once you have that, you mentioned the website, and it is important to have that focal point, isn't it, to drive traffic to the website and to have your information, your contacts, and your services on that website.
I think so. I mean, if you think about it, if you're going to get a haircut or go to a doctor or looking for a new dentist, where do you go? You go to Google, you
Mm.
search, and if you get a name, like I'll look in my insurance, and oh, these people are practitioners in my plan. I'll go and see if they have a website. Unfortunately, a lot of doctors don't bother to have a website, and which I think is really a shame for them, because it would be nice to get to know some of these practitioners, but the same for you. As a hypnotherapist, I think that presence is important. Now, I do know somebody, she's a coach, not a hypnotherapist, but she worked for probably 20 years without a website. So she just recently got a website. She did everything through Facebook groups very successfully, but you have to know what you're doing. Um, and if you want Google to find you or Yelp to find you, something like that, I think the website's going to be important. And naming your business, again, really think about that. I just named my business with my name. So that, I just wanted people to know me, right? And then I have, like, my school has a different name, but um, it's a little hard, I think, when, maybe I train all these people and then later I see a business name and I think, well, who's that? Right. And then I have to go in and search and, oh, yeah, I know that person, I know them. Right. So there is a benefit of having your own name in that name, and certainly capturing that so nobody else is building a website that with with
It,
with odd things on it. Um,
it's funny, that was one of the first things that somebody said to me, use your name in your business because that's your instant recognition. And usually nobody else has that, hopefully, so you can use that. Just finally, something that occurred to me today before we actually caught up to talk about this: attitude towards promoting yourself. Now, again, a hypnotherapist can be shy or retiring or sort of like to have just do their work. How important do you think that approach is, that you have the attitude of, I'm going to go and get this?
I think it makes a huge difference. If you have the energy and the enthusiasm and you're out having fun, the whole idea, go out and have fun. You're meeting people. And, I went to a luncheon and most of the people I didn't even know. It was like 12 or 15 of us ladies, and everybody introduced themselves. And I was 1 to 2 degrees separate from everybody there. People would say, oh, I attended a workshop of yours. Oh, my girlfriend told me about you. Every single person there knew me, and I only knew 3 people in the group. And so I like that, right? So having the website, getting out, having that enthusiasm, um, just participating, showing up, um, being kind to people, having fun, smiling and laughing. And, again, well, we didn't really talk about it, but when you're talking to people about what you do, don't be salesy, right? One of the big mistakes, I think, I went to a network group luncheon years ago, and at the table, this one lady, just all she did was just try to sell you her product, and I just was like, I don't even want to talk to you anymore. Just stop, right? So get to know people, really be interested in them and build genuine relationships, and that will go a lot farther.
Can I ask you one final question? And we haven't touched on it, but I know that it's often talked about niching yourself so that you do a specific area of hypnotherapy. Do you think that's vital, or is that something that you should do?
I would highly recommend it. I did not niche, when I started out, it was like, I want clients. I don't care what you want. I'll take you, right? I want all the clients. And so, on the business card, it was like, oh, stress, weight loss, smoking, da, 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 on and on and on. Um, and now, more recently, in the last many years, maybe a decade, I have really focused on what my passion is about, which is the spirituality, helping people with purpose, past life regression, doing those things. And what I have found is that the people who call me with weight loss and addiction and all the same stuff, but they choose me because I'm really promoting the thing that I'm passionate about. I'm promoting purpose and past life regression and spiritual connections, and all of that. And so that resonates, but you won't lose those other customers. But what happens is, in the beginning, I was writing articles on every single topic. I had to have pages on my website that addressed every single topic. And, it's too much. It's too much. So if you can really focus, you put your energy into that focus, you'll stay. First of all, if it's something you really, really love, then you're going to be enthusiastic.
Mm.
If you want to talk to me about past life regression, I will talk to you for the next 2 weeks, right? I don't care. This is going to be fun, right? But some of those other topics, it's like, okay, after 30 minutes, it's like, can we move on now? Right? But somebody else might really want to dig into stress or, cancer. People use hypnotherapy for cancer, and that's what they study. That's the other thing. If you're trying to do all of it, you kind of have to study each of those topics, and write articles and, or blog posts and things. And it's just a lot more work. So yeah, I would say pick that niche, but be prepared to work with anything because everybody will still come to you.
Okay.
Okay, well, one more thing on the website. Before you get your website, go to a service like GoDaddy and put the titles in there. Um, and you might want to talk to somebody that knows search engine optimization or run it past AI to find out, because if you are not using your name, if you're going to have a fancy title, you're going to want to have certain keywords in that title that are going to draw your ranking on Google. Um, but you can't use a title that somebody else already has a business, right?
Mm.
So you want to go in and search. You don't want to go get the business license and, with a fantastic title, and then you go to get your website and you can't, because
And use it. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
can't use it. Now you have something else, and, you have to do it, it. So get the website first, or at least buy the URL, and then go and get your business license with that name.
That's good advice. Yeah, certainly make sure you've set it up and you have it in your name. And some of those web providers offer a free a free name if you want to take that from them, but you can also purchase one individually as well. So, but yes, it's most important to check. Otherwise, it'd be very frustrating.
Oh, yeah, if you go down a whole line,
Yeah,
business cards and everything, and then you can't get the website. Oh no.
yeah.
Um, yeah, well, this has been fun. I hope people have learned a lot. And oh, and I was going to mention, the hesitation, some of the problems that new people do run into is, I mentioned trying to sell to everyone, but not starting right away. I get frustrated when my students, months later or a year later, they say, "Oh yeah, I graduated and I love it, but I just, I haven't taken the first step yet." And so one of the things I would highly recommend to new graduates and people who want to launch, just get out there and do it. You will fail. It's going to be hard. My motto is, if I don't fail by noon every day in something, then I'm not pushing hard enough, right? So you're going to go out there and take different steps, and you're going to, you'll see, oh, that door closed. Okay, oh, this door opens, and you just keep walking through those open doors, and you see that it all expands. But don't be afraid of failure. Get out there and do it. Don't keep collecting certifications. I also know a lot of people that, they have walls filled with certifications and they haven't launched a business. So just go out and do it. Just go do it. And that's how you're going to learn and get really good at
Mm.
it. Is I was terrible when I began my first. I look back and it's like I'm so embarrassed at the first sessions I had, because I hadn't developed everything that I have now. And I hand all of that to my students. So you people, all of my graduates are a lot more prepared with all these tools than I was when I went out there. But you're probably a little shaky, or you're not you, of course, but when you're first
Oh
starting.
no, I'm shaky and nervous. Yes.
Or
Right.
what tool am I going to use? How am I going to do this?
Mm.
And the only way to get beyond that is to, it's like practicing the piano. You just have to keep doing it. So just go out there, launch your business, and have fun. So
Okay.
anyway, thank you, Graham. Your questions are great, and I hope everybody benefited from this.
Indeed. Nice catching up with you again, and hopefully we'll talk more in the future.
I look forward to it. You have a
Thanks.
great rest of your day or evening. You're in
Yeah,
Australia, so.
it's middle of the day here, so it's still plenty of daytime for me.
Ah, good. Okay. All right. Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.